We have news today from Royal Enfield. This is a new bike that they're calling the Guerrilla 450. And this is coming off of the same platform that the Himalayan 450 is on.
Yeah, and this is a really sweet looking bike by the looks of it, and one that's probably going to be pretty affordable too, as is usually the case with Royal Enfield. So we've got all the specs here, we've got all the photos to show you, some video clips of it, and we're just going to go through all the details of this new Guerrilla 450, tell you what it's all about.
Yeah, a lot of information that we have here directly from Royal Enfield, so all of this is confirmed. So for the engine, we've got a liquid-cooled 452cc single-cylinder engine that they call the Sherpa. This is the same engine that you're going to find in the Himalayan. It does have slightly different tuning, but around about 39 horsepower at 8,000 RPM and 30 pound-feet of torque at 5,500 RPM. Now, the nice thing about these liquid-cooled singles compared to the 350s, for example, is that these power figures are closer to the power figures that you'll get even on some of the Royal bigger bikes like the 650s, which make about 47 horsepower. So these motors are closing in on those numbers, which is nice.
Yeah, power looks to be pretty good, and torquey engine down low is always going to be fun, especially in somewhat of a smaller displacement bike. So good to see that kind of stuff. 6-speed transmission, pretty standard in that front. And then we have a slip and assist clutch as well. And then you got a couple of riding modes too, which is sweet on what is pretty much an entry-level bike. So not a ton, but performance and eco are the two modes you can switch through to get obviously quicker acceleration, little snappier throttle, or little tamed down throttle to obviously save some fuel and get you on a longer ride.
Now, underneath, you're going to find Showa suspension, 43mm forks, and a monoshock with preload adjustment in the rear. And up front, 5.5 inches of travel and 5.9 inches of travel rear. So still a decent amount of travel, even though this is not an off-road bike like the Himalayan is.
Yeah, and no adjustment at all in the front forks. It's just standard how it comes. But again, like is pretty much the theme with this bike and all bikes in this category, you're not really going to expect too much adjustment in the suspension, and preload adjustment in the rear monoshock is pretty standard stuff.
Now for brakes, they've got vide brakes, which is nice. That's the lower brand of Brembo, so it's not their full-on Brembo brakes, but still coming from the same folks. 310mm disc in the front with a 2-piston caliper and a 270mm disc in the rear with a single piston. Again, not a super powerful bike, so it's not like it needs a ton of brakes. You'll be fine without dual front discs because, yeah, we're only pushing about 40 horsepower, and ABS comes standard. So especially if you're looking at this as potentially an entry-level bike, ABS is good on any bike, but if you're just getting into riding, it's especially nice to have.
Yeah, I say this all the time, but I really love that ABS is standard, gives you less to choose from when you're kind of learning about motorcycles. They all come with ABS. I think that's exactly how it should be on a bike that's going to be pretty much only used on the street and picked up by a lot of entry-level riders or beginners. So that's all good to see. Pretty low seat height too, which is going to play well for beginners. So it's under 31 inches, 30.7 inches to be exact. And not a super heavy motorcycle either. Wet weight is 405 pounds. Royal Enfield does their weights a little differently than some of the other manufacturers, so that's with a 90% full tank of fuel. So if you top it up all the way, you can add a little bit of weight to that, but it's not going to go up that much more. And speaking of the tank, it holds 2.9 gallons, which isn't a ton of fuel, but this motor should be sipping fuel pretty conservatively.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and 400 pounds is a decent bit of weight for a single-cylinder bike. It's definitely not the lightest single-cylinder bike out there, and that is partly going to come down to the way that Royal Enfield manufactures their bikes. Not only are these vehicles very classic in their styling, but in the way that they're built as well. So you'll find a lot of metal on the bike, which is nice. It makes it feel like kind of a premium motorcycle rather than being covered in a whole lot of plastic, but you still get some of this modern tech, which is always nice to have. And that 30.7-inch seat height is not bad. That's pretty similar to like a Grom seat height. So if you're looking in the realm of a starter bike especially, motorcycle like this would be fun even for someone that's been riding for a while, but that lowish seat height is definitely going to make it a pretty easy bike to step into.
Yeah, definitely. There are 3 different variants that they're going to offer, at least at the launch. So 3 different trims. That would be the Analog, the Dash, and the Flash. And all 3 of them kind of have a different instrumentation set up on the front. So the Analog is unique to the other 2. It like the name, gets an analog speedometer with a separate tripper navigation pod. So you've got an actual physical needle that moves, nice round looking instrumentation. And then off to the left of that, you have a little smaller screen made by Tripper. And that's what you're going to use to connect to your phone, to control your music, to, put up your maps and be able to know where to turn, all that kind of stuff. So it's cool that they're kind of blending together this old school analog tack with a separate, navigation pod on the side that really makes it feel modern.
Yeah, and the dash and flash models will get a 4-inch TFT, so a little bit more high-tech, but nothing too crazy. The focus of this bike is not really on technology. So if you want something that is kind of classically styled, but still, again, gives you some of those modern amenities that realistically in a brand new bike you do want to have, this is a great way to go, and especially at a very entry-level price. Now, we haven't seen an official price figure from Royal Enfield yet because this is not actually announced yet for the US, but it does seem to be coming this way. It should be announced probably in about a year is what we're expecting. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the price of the Himalayan that shares a lot of parts with this bike, and the chassis between the two bikes are different. Obviously, the styling, bodywork is different. So there are differences. But them being comparable motorcycles, the Himalayan costs around $5,000. So we can expect that the pricing on this should fall somewhere in that range. All of these Royal Enfield bikes are pretty affordable. The most expensive they get is right around $7,000 for like a nicely spec'd Continental GT, depending on what color scheme that you go with on it. And that being said, if you do want to have that 270-degree parallel twin, something like that Continental is not going to be that much more expensive. So that'll be something to weigh if you're looking to get one of these Royal Enfield road bikes, more street-focused bikes. But this looks like it'll be a good option, and having more options is always good.
Yeah, I'm excited to hopefully be able to play around with these because the Royal Enfields we've been hearing about, it's all about build quality. You got to really get up close to it and feel it and touch it to see what we're talking about. But this should be kind of the same thing as all the other Royal Enfields, impressive build quality for an impressive price. And I really like, the style of this bike. It's what we expect from Royal Enfield. And even if you go with like the Dash or the Flash models, that TFT, even though it's not like a physical needle, it's still a round, old school looking instrumentation cluster that you can still connect your phone to, still pull up maps on. So no matter what variant you get, you're still getting a very classic looking Roadster. And I think that's sweet. A classic motorcycle with, modern reliability and modern tech and really competitive pricing. That's what we want to see in the industry.
No, it's an awesome thing to have on the market because there's not a ton else out there that's quite like it. Something that's so retro and also so affordable and easy to step into even for a new rider. Now, as we wrap up this video, I also want to say a quick thanks to our friends over at Rider Justice. Those guys have been supporting our channel basically since day one. So if you ever need legal representation, either on 2 wheels or 4, be sure you call Scott first because those guys are awesome. And that's pretty much it for this bike. Some point down the line, we'll have some more information on this motorcycle when it officially gets announced for the US. And then, fingers crossed, we actually get the chance to get on it and ride it.
Yeah, that is the goal. You guys seem to be super interested in the Royals, so we're trying to bring you more news on them and hopefully some more riding videos because they are impressive, especially when you just go through their website, look at the spec sheet, look at the photos, and then look at the price. Keep coming back to the price, but the price has got to be the most impressive part with these bikes.
Big time.
Thanks for watching. Check out alltfl.com so you don't miss anything in the future. Check out our Patreon page as well if you want to get some access to early videos before we post them. We'll see you in the next one.